Imagine London in the late 19th century, gas lamps flickering through the fog, cobblestone streets echoing with carriage wheels, and the uneasy silence of Whitechapel, a district plagued by poverty, crime, and something far darker. Between August and November of 1888, the shadow of a name would haunt not only London, but the entire world. Jack the Ripper. A killer who murdered at least 5 women with brutality so shocking that newspapers sold by the millions, igniting fear, fascination, and endless speculation. And yet, more than a century later, his identity remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. Tonight, we peel back the layers of this mystery, separating fact from myth, guided by the work of respected historians and criminologists, and we'll see why Jack the Ripper is not just a killer, but a chilling cultural icon whose shadow still hangs over history. The story begins in Whitechapel, East London, a neighborhood that was, in the words of historian Lisa Picard, a breeding ground for despair. Overcrowded lodging houses, disease, alcoholism, and prostitution made the area notorious even before the killings began. In Judith Flanders' The Victorian City, she explains how Victorian society preferred to ignore Whitechapel, treating it as a stain on the otherwise gleaming narrative of industrial progress. Into this setting of desperation and neglect stepped Jack the Ripper, or rather, emerged from it. His victims were women working as prostitutes, marginalized and forgotten by society. The press sensationalized these murders, branding them not just as crimes but as symbols of urban decay. As historian Hallie Rubenhold argues in The Five, the untold lives of the women killed by Jack the Ripper, focusing only on the killer erases the humanity of the women. They were not faceless victims, but individuals with histories, families, and dreams caught in the brutal machinery of Victorian poverty. The murders themselves, beginning with Mary and Nichols on August 31st, 1888, shook London to its core. Nichols was discovered in Bucks Row, her throat slashed and her abdomen mutilated. Just a week later, Annie Chapman was murdered in Hanbury Street, her body disemboweled with chilling precision. Then came the so-called double event on September 30th, the killings of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Ed Dowse within an hour of each other. Stride's throat was cut, but her body was not mutilated, leading some to believe the killer was interrupted. Ed Dowse, however, was found with horrific abdominal mutilations, her kidney removed. The final canonical victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was discovered in her miller's courtroom on November 9th. Her body was mutilated beyond recognition, and what experts like Donald Rumbelow in The Complete Jack the Ripper describe as the most savage killing of the series. Each murder revealed both frenzy and method, a paradox that fueled speculation about the killer's background. Was he a surgeon? A butcher? Or simply a sadistic monster with steady hands? The press played a crucial role in transforming these killings into legend. Newspapers like The Star and the Illustrated Police News turned every detail into sensational front-page stories, competing for sales by stoking public terror. Letters allegedly written by the killer, signed Jack the Ripper, were sent to the press and police. The most famous, the Dear Boss letter, gave birth to the name itself. While many experts, including Philip Sugden in The Complete History of Jack the Ripper, argue that most letters were hoaxes, they nonetheless entrenched the killer in the public imagination. The police, meanwhile, faced criticism for failing to catch him, despite deploying hundreds of officers, interviewing thousands, and offering rewards. The failure wasn't just about the killer's cunning. It was about a city ill-equipped to handle modern criminal investigation. Forensic science was in its infancy, and the Ripper murders exposed the limitations of 19th century policing. Over the decades, countless suspects have been proposed. Some point to Montague John Drute, a barrister whose suicide coincided with the end of the murders, though evidence remains circumstantial. Others suspect Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant barber, supported by the controversial DNA evidence analyzed in recent years. Historian Paul Begg in Jack the Ripper, the definitive history emphasizes how each generation reshapes the case, projecting its anxieties and biases onto the list of suspects. From royal conspiracy theories implicating Prince Albert Victor to accusations against artist Walter Sickert to the possibility of a rogue doctor, the sheer volume of theories reveals more about society's fascination with evil than about the truth itself. But let's pause for a moment. If you've stayed with me this far, it means you're as fascinated by history's shadows as I am. And here's where I invite you, if you want more deep dives into mysteries, forgotten empires, and legendary battles, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a story that takes you straight into the heart of history's most gripping moments. Returning to Whitechapel, the Ripper case also reveals how social prejudices shaped the investigation. Many of the police assumptions were rooted in class and ethnic stereotypes, often targeting immigrants and the poor. Historian Clive Bloom in Ripper, Conspiracy and Death, A History of Fear, shows how the killings reflected Victorian fears of urban disorder, immigration, and moral decline. Instead of seeing the murders purely as acts of violence, the press and authorities framed them as warnings about the dangers of degenerate populations. In this way, Jack the Ripper was not just an individual criminal, but a mirror reflecting society's darkest anxieties. Modern criminologists also weigh in using psychological profiling. John Douglas, the FBI profiler who pioneered criminal profiling, suggested that the Ripper was likely a local man familiar with Whitechapel, socially awkward, and deeply misogynistic. This aligns with modern interpretations of serial killers as products of environment and pathology. Yet, despite these tools, the identity remains elusive. The mystery persists precisely because it cannot be solved with certainty, and that makes it endlessly fascinating. Jack the Ripper is more than a historical criminal. He is a cultural symbol. Films, novels, graphic novels like Alan Moore's From Hell, and countless documentaries have reimagined him. Some portray him as a monstrous phantom, others as a tragic figure, others still as a symbol of systemic failure. As historian Drew Gray puts it, Jack the Ripper has become a canvas onto which every generation paints its nightmares. For Victorians, he was a sign of urban decay. For later generations, he embodied the archetype of the faceless serial killer, inspiring characters from Hannibal Lecter to modern crime thrillers. And so, more than 130 years later, the shadow lingers. Perhaps the greatest truth about Jack the Ripper is not who he was, but what he represents: the limits of justice, the vulnerability of the forgotten, and the enduring power of fear. We may never know his name, but we know the names of his victims: Mary and Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Ed Dowse, and Mary Jane Kelly. They are the true anchors of the story, and remembering them is how we keep the history grounded in humanity. In the end, Jack the Ripper's mystery may never be solved, but perhaps that is why he endures. He forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about crime, inequality, and the darkness that lurks in human society. And as long as fog still settles over old cobblestones, and as long as history's unsolved mysteries fascinate us, the Ripper's shadow will never fade. So, as we close the story, remember, history isn't just about dates and facts, but about the questions that refuse to be answered. Jack the Ripper is one such question. He is the silence in the alley, the shadow in the fog, the mystery that London could never solve. And maybe, just maybe, that is his most chilling legacy of all.